All right, everyone. Jennifer here. And I don't even know where to begin because I'm so excited to be making this recording for you all. Curious leadership through appreciative inquiry. And, I've been listening to everyone, listening? No, reading and listening because you made some recordings too, but reading and listening to everyone's comments about identifying as a leader. And I find that so inspiring. I've been saying that for a long time, that teachers and people who work with students and the families, you are leaders. You set the tone of the classroom or the conversations you are having. I know most of you are teachers, but some of you are not. And I want to remember that and honor that. So, be that as it may, like anybody has the potential to be a leader. And it's really inspiring. And coming through to appreciative inquiry, I really feel that that is the secret sauce. And we're going to dig deep into this. This is all through my particular lens. And in your research, you might find different spins on it. You might find other, I don't want to say competing, but maybe some competing information about it. One caveat is, just like social emotional learning, if it's not done correctly, appreciative inquiry might get a bad rep. Social emotional learning, if it's done so that there's no boundaries anymore and every student, gets a gold star without doing work and it's all about their feelings, and it's done in a way where you lose autonomy within your own classroom or your own career, then people start to get frustrated and say, oh, well, SEL is bad. I think we've heard some of that, oh, that's the problem with kids. We've gone soft on them. No, you can have high expectations and also be student-centered and loving and caring, and have rigor in a curriculum. Same thing with appreciative inquiry. When I started to learn about it and was so excited about it, and then I was researching it more, and some people said, yeah, appreciative inquiry, that's what cost me my job, because I got laid off because of appreciative inquiry. And, if that's people's experience, I am so sorry. Some people think they know what appreciative inquiry is, and then they will use that when they are efficiency experts and stuff like that. And that's really not what AI is. Anything can be good or bad. It's how you implement it. So I'm going to go on to the kinder, gentler, true sense of appreciative inquiry. And again, through the lens of Jennifer as an educator as well. So just kind of want to put that out there as a disclaimer, because if people start researching stuff and find some negative stuff, it's maybe the message and not the medium, if that makes sense. All right, so here we go. I've been sharing the screen audio on the Zoom because I really like to have music behind. I feel that it sets a nice tone. I hope it's not distracting for people. Let me stop just this type of screen sharing and do so we can do the screen as well. And here we are. Share. That's the music right here if you're interested. All right, so let me, Curious Leadership Foundations, here we go. Present. All right, so David Cooper Ryder, if you've done some of the history of AI, and I really wish that they would change it to AQ, because now that we have the other AI, artificial intelligence, it gets kind of confusing, but I'm going to just say AI or appreciative inquiry. But David Cooper Ryder, he's known as the founder. And, you'll see some of the deep dives of the timeline when you go on to AI Commons. Here's a quote. I'm just going to read it. If you want to read it along with me, you might even want to say it out loud. It could be argued that all leadership is appreciative leadership. It's the capacity to see the best in the world around us, in our colleagues, and in the groups we are trying to lead. It's the capacity to see the most creative and improbable opportunities in the marketplace. It's the capacity to see with an appreciative eye the true and the good, the better and the possible. That's it in a nutshell. Now, I got a chance to meet David, and there's a picture of me that I have with him. And I spoke to him, and I had tears in my eyes, and I said, this needs to come to education, to schools. And he said, do it, like, absolutely, and you'll see that it is coming, but we are way ahead of the curve. So here we are. Next slide. All right, so I can't even talk. Curiosity leadership approach, right? So if you are a curious leader, what does that mean? I love the fact that people are saying, I never heard of curious leadership. What is it? Right. And how ironic is that? Right. Yeah, I want you to be curious on what is curious leadership. And it's inquiry driven. So it's right aligned with appreciative inquiry. It's strength based and it's the whole system. So if you are a leader, it's recognizing that it's not just you making decisions. This is where we're going. Are you with me? And you hope people come and follow. It's recognizing that, and especially in education, all those different moving pieces. You have the students in your classroom or the clients that you serve, their families, your colleagues, your supervisors above you. Like, there is just a very intricate dance that you need to choreograph when you interact with people. And strength-based, or strengths, maybe I should have put an S there, to realize that a curious leader, it's not about having all the right answers as a leader. A person who thinks that they have all the answers, you might say that they're a dictator, right? It's about asking the right questions. And that's just the whole thing right there. Now, how do we do that? That's what this is going to be about. All right. So, little feelings check. Are you more like this picture in general? And especially, after teaching through the pandemic, you could say a person who works with children at any time is kind of like that, dealing with all the different personalities and all these things that are going on. And you think you have everything all put together, and then the internet goes down, and then the copy machine doesn't work, and you're just juggling or bouncing all these balls. It's a balancing act. And man, she's doing a great job, but she's struggling there. It's hard. However, there are some people that through all of that are like this. Bring it on, bring it on. Yes, yes. This is what I was meant to do. I've been training for this moment. Everything's leading up to this. And, you just are so energized. And of course, I had to put something from Rocky, been, living so close to Philadelphia. And, look at it too. He Balboa is going up, and there are people following as well. So it's a nice metaphor. So think about that, right? Which one are you? Maybe you're a little bit of both. And here's where you're going to pause the video for a moment as soon as I read this question, and you can put this in your note catcher or on a piece of paper, or even if you just want to think about it. But writing down is really optimum. Why is it important for you to step into your role as an educational leader with your district? And what do you think your district needs most from you right now? Now, you could ask that question literally right now because we're in the summer, or you could just ask that question at all times. What do the people need from me, all stakeholders need from me most right now? It's a mindful question. It's defining your purpose. So pause this video and answer these two questions. All right. Now, if we were uh, together. I would say, talk to a neighbor or your small group, take some turns, or also, I would put you in a breakout room and share with one another. But since we're doing this asynchronously, it's by yourself. We may want to put this in a chat. I could create that for us on our LMS. All right, so I said that was a purpose question, and that is important to have as a leader all the time, as an educator as well. You have kids saying, why are we even learning this? What's the point of this? Purpose questions, it opens up that curiosity loop. It gives a voice to all participants. And the whole thing is you're asking them the purpose question. You are not telling them, well, the reason why it's important to learn about Mesopotamia is because da, 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 da. Now you've just given them the answer, and now they're either on board with you or not. But when they create their own reason, now it's student-centered. When you ask people, why do you think we did that? What's up with that? And they come up with these ideas. Now they're owner of their own education. So that's why I did that with you first. And to be thinking about, and I asked that leadership question because if you think about what you feel your school needs from you most right now, or your career, you can set that intention and bring your best self to whatever it is we're doing. And if people question you and say, well, why were you doing that? And you could say, well, my intention was because what I think people need most from me right now is my sympathy or empathy, or my creativity, or my vision for the future. So when you ask me, why are we doing this one thing, that's my intention. I'm wondering, how does that sound for you? What about your intention? Why do you think it's important? All right, so let's move on. All right, this is where we start to get into the nitty-gritty a little bit. So curious leadership, where you're asking the questions of people, is very different from the typical problem-finding top-down leadership. Now, this is what I feel really needs to change in education, is we're using an industrial model, factory-based, where you have the owner of the organization. Think of the Rockefellers and the Carnegies, and back before there were labor unions, right? And still to this day, you have one person who's the boss, and then underneath him or her, underneath them are people that are in charge of their own teams, and it just trickles down. So that way, when you have the people at the bottom, do they have much agency? Now, think about that within schools. Certain schools, maybe you do have more autonomy in your classroom. Hattie, the one researcher, Hattie said that one of the top indicators of student success is actual teacher self-efficacy, where they are able to make decisions on behalf of what they feel is best for the students. Now, what I would say too, and what goes in tandem with that, is student self-reported grades. So when the teachers in the class or the adults in the class are guiding the students, so that the students can constantly reflect back and say, how did that work for me? Do I need more time with that? That's where you have student success. So if that's what we know is true, because the research of Hattie has a meta-analysis of hundreds, if not thousands, of classrooms and supporting this data. If that's the case within the classroom, do we have that within the entire system? All right, so think about that. Here's the new model. Rather than having one person making decisions and rolling it out and it trickles down to the people, what you do is you have a spider web where everyone is participating in seeking the answers to a certain question. All right. And we're going to get into that as far as the types of questions. And when you appreciate something, there's a double meaning with that word. And that was probably in one of those videos that I had you watch with Lindsay Godwin. What you appreciate will appreciate. Appreciate means grow. If you have money in the bank and it appreciates in value, it gets larger. So what you have a positive regard for will become larger. Now, for some people, their positive regard might be focusing on negative stuff. Have you ever met people who they're not really happy unless they're miserable? There's a reason for that. When you look for things and then you find it, you get a hit of dopamine in your pleasure center of your brain. So if you are looking for negativity and then you find it, believe it or not, you'll get a little rush of dopamine and then you get addicted to that. That's why the faculty room can be, like a moth to a flame, where people will complain and there's something like you get a little rush or a charge out of it. End it. Stop that habit, make a new one. You can also get addicted to being happy. So if you say there's so much beauty in the world, and then you go for a walk and you see dewdrops on grass, or a beautiful bird in flight, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's just so amazing. And then you see the happy things in life. And you know that there are some people who are always like that, right? Wouldn't you like to be that person? So really start to be mindful of where are you directing your energy, right? And so the whole thing is to examine the best of what was, is, and might be. Time, is not just a timeline or a continuum, beginning, middle, end. If you know string theory and quantum physics and everything, time can fold in on itself. Sounds a little weird, but the whole process of going back in time, going back in time, your brain does not know the difference between what's going on right now and reliving a memory. So you might have even seen students and you're like, yo, where'd you go right there? They literally were daydreaming about something and thinking, and we're back there. And then you snap them back to the present. Like they did go somewhere else, right? They went back in time in their mind. You can time travel. All right. So thinking about that, you'll notice that there is one person up at the top orchestrating, choreographing this beautiful spider web of exchange, right? So I don't want people to think that appreciative inquiry is where a leader is completely laissez-faire and hands-off and say, well, I'm just going to give you the freedom to do whatever you want. No, you do maintain a sense of control, but what you're controlling is that positive culture, and you're controlling the focus of where you would like them to be by asking certain questions in a very specific, pointed way. When I first started practicing appreciative inquiry, I realized that every single word is so important. And we're going to get into that in our next installment. A definite article versus an indefinite article. The word some versus the word many. All these words are so important. And it's amazing. There have been times where I asked a question of a group and I was like, that's not where I thought this was going to go. And I realized it was my fault because I didn't have the specific, precise enough question. You may ask students a certain question and they're just like, what? And then you'll rephrase it and then you'll see them come alive. Oh, right. So keep that in mind as well. All right. So here's a side-by-side comparison of appreciative inquiry and normal ways of viewing things within an organization. We are an organization, schools are organizations, right? And we'll get into that a little bit more. If you look over on the gray side, how many times have you sat in a meeting, professional development, a committee, really? They give you packets of data and you see that there's a problem and you try to fix it and you move forward. What if there's a certain group of students where they are not taking accelerated courses. Is that a problem? How do we fix that? Are there students who are not coming into school? Let's fix that. Why aren't they coming into school? Let's flip it. Let's look at students who are taking accelerated classes. Why? What do they have? What support systems do they have that they are doing that? And let's make sure that the other group gets that. Students who would have every reason not to come to school, but yet they are. If we look at resilience, I don't want to be romanticizing problems or toxic positivity is a big buzzword right now. That's not what this is. Resilience does imply that there are problems. And isn't it great to be resilient? Isn't it great to be positive through negative things? It's not like we are just brushing problems aside. It is the human condition to have conflict, to struggle. That is where growth occurs. And you have some people who have come from the most abject poverty, trauma, and they still thrive. And resilience is the study of why people become successful despite challenges. And let's focus on that. And, I could go into a resilience lesson. In fact, I should probably put that. That's important. Resilience. I put it on my little Post-it note. So appreciative inquiry is very aligned with being resilient, because it's not ignoring that there are problems. It's not just rose-colored glasses. It is, despite X, Y, and Z, how might we do what it is we want to achieve? So the best of what was, is, and might be, so it becomes the destiny that it shall be. And you'll see that there's a lot of D's over there: discovering, dreaming, designing, deploying, destiny. We're going to get into that later too. All right, so here was the timeline that I had talked about earlier. Charest, along with David, created this organizational study research at Case Western Reserve. Where I did my study in appreciative inquiry was at Case Western. And, that's important to mention. Reason why is, sometimes things get diluted, and I got it from source in Cleveland, Ohio. So what happened was, that happened in the 80s, right around the same time as Martin Seligman at Penn. That's just down the road. How fortunate are we to be so close to U of Penn with positive psychology. And positive psychology, and I had you watch that, right, was flipping the model for mental health, where it's, let's not just diagnose someone, give them a label, and they have some type of neurotic situation, and let's fix them and make them whole. He was saying, how about we study people who don't have any issues and what goes into that? How do we create a thriving culture? How do we have a climate where people flourish? And that's the same thing with appreciative inquiry. So even though they were, two different people at two different universities delving into this, it's very much aligned. And you'll see that Seligman and Cooper Ryder will create events together. So what was happening is, as they were studying these things of what makes organizations thrive, and they started to notice this repeated pattern, after a while, he created a framework, and let's standardize this. And that's where in the early 2000s, with Dr. Diane Whitney from the Taos Institute, and if you go onto the Taos Institute, they're also talking about social constructionism. I need to research that. But the whole thing of appreciative inquiry in the theory, it doesn't happen in a bubble. It happens with people as well. So they wanted to make sure that there are some frameworks. So when people are talking about AI, that we're all on the same page and we can use the same terms and conversations, right? All right, little brain break. Take a stretch. Take a deep breath. And here's a nice little quote. So thinking about AI. We're changing the lens through which we see the world. Questions are fateful. There's a lot of quotes that you'll hear when you start to see AI. You'll see it in all of the articles and everything. Conversations create our world. And you'll see that certain patterns emerge in different philosophies and psychologies. And when you start to see that repeated pattern from different areas in the world, wow, like, isn't that amazing that individuals from different times and different places have arrived at these universal truths? Joseph Campbell, I love him. And the whole idea of a monomyth, that there are certain human characteristics that we can all relate to that unify us. And how beautiful is that? When you focus on strengths, you are uncovering systems when they're operating at their best. Why we look for problems and fix them, again, if you look for it, you'll find it. You will always find problems. And then you will get happy when you find problems. Let's flip it. The task of leadership is to create alignment of strengths, making a system's weaknesses irrelevant. And that's Peter Drucker. And that's so important. Do we do that in education? Do we focus on the areas that we need to remediate? And then how does that make the student feel? If you have a student who's a weak reader, do we want them to become a better reader? Of course. But when they get this message that they're not good in something, meanwhile, they may be doing fabulous stuff at the skate park. But do we really celebrate that part of them? Let's work to get the kid off of the ineligibility list so they can play. And then people will say, well, that's the problem, is we're focusing too much on the sports and not the academics. And I was guilty of that. But if that's where they come alive and that's where they have their areas where they shine, what if we said, you know what? You're a fantastic skater. You're a fantastic football player. I can't do what you do. How do you do that? What do you do that makes you so good? And if they start unpacking that and then say, I wonder if we could do that with your reading class. How might that look? When you celebrate the best of what was, and then what might be, and focus on the strengths. I'm telling you, this unlocks so many things. I'm getting like goosebumps. All right, second question, we're going to appreciate. We're going to take a pause. Everything that I shared with you so far, what has resonated most with you? What do you appreciate the most out of everything I said? Take a moment, write it down, and be sure to unpack it a little bit. What about it is so energizing, inspiring, validating? Take a moment. Pause it. Come back. I got this mug at Home Goods. I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if it's flipped or not. This is a good day to have a good day. And I can see it and you can see it. Affirmations matter. All right, so you paused it, you came back. Here we are again. I would have shared that. And where are we next? All right, we're going to do this a little bit, and then we're going to pause it, and I'm going to do like a second thing, a whole nother video. How living systems function. I am a fractal geek. I love fractals. Fractals are, this is going to be a very unscientific explanation of it, but you have a repeated pattern and it expands and it goes out and out and out. And if you have Romanesque broccoli, you'll see that. And Queen Anne's lace, ferns, shells, trees. There is a purposeful or intelligent design, if you will. And that was like a big thing, talking about creationism, versus evolution and this euphemism of intelligent design, and very controversial. But if you just think about what does that mean? Intelligent design is that there is an order to the way things are built. Look at salt crystals, snowflakes. Like, to me, that is just amazing that these things exist. And, I'm not getting religious or spiritual in that sense, but just to realize, we are what, 70% water? So is the earth. We are from the earth. Like, all this stuff to me just like blows my mind. And by the way, spirituality, Sarah Trubridge, who wrote Resilience Begins with Beliefs, she's my friend-tor, friend, mentor. Mentor applies, I know more than you and I'm above you, but a friend who supports you to be your best self is a friend-tor. And I met her at Penn with the Delaware Valley Consortium of Equity and Excellence with Bob Jarvis. And she was saying that, she's big on resilience and social emotional learning. And she said, I'm telling you, when you talk about the whole child, numeracy, literacy, their emotional well-being, their cognitive well-being, all of this stuff, she said, the next one that we need, and I was going to say final one, but there may be more beyond that, but a student's spirituality. And we're really, some people get afraid of that word spirituality because does it imply religion? Does it imply faith? Her definition of spirituality, and I like it, is understanding why are we here? What is our purpose? What is our meaning? What gives us energy? Understanding our truest nature and doing something for the benefit of the world, right? So that is spirituality. Some people like to use the word consciousness, to have an awareness of why we're here. Now, to me, that one can even be more controversial to use that word because consciousness, mindfulness, there are some people who, even though science has supported what mindfulness does for your brain, people shy away from that because they're afraid that, oh, well, if I meditate, I'll, allow negative things to come in. And, I respect people's fear of things like that. But meditation versus prayer, is there a difference? Consciousness and awareness. So I'm kind of going off on a tangent with that, but which I tend to do. This whole idea of look at nature, and I said, we are nature. We are human beings. We are animals. We have a heartbeat, a nervous system, just like animals do. Plants we're learning a lot more about trees and plants and how they are a lot more awake than we realize. So if you look at this, we are a human living system. We are a fractal. If I have a thought, an idea, and I share it with someone else, and then that pair works with another pair to become a square, and then those squares start to organize, right? We see that in the classroom. There's a ripple effect, right? Sometimes it can be in a bad way where someone says something and then they pass it, and before you know it, the whole class is like off task. But if you do it in a good way, you can see those neurons firing and it expands. So once we have an understanding of how we function and we leverage that, then we can organize our interactions the way we want and set us up for the outcome we want. So check this out. Remember I said how we mimic nature because we are nature? Look at what a tree looks like versus a lung. And what do they both do? Take in air, exchange air, and they're organized the same way. And look at a lightning strike and look at a neuron firing in the brain. They're both electrical impulses and they look the same. I sing the body electric. Isn't that Walt Whitman? You English teachers, right? Again, I literally am getting little goosebumps when I think about this. And you think about the concept of expansion and contraction, right? That is life. Expansion and contraction. What does the heart do? Pump blood, and it's got to expand and contract. What do our lungs do? That's life-giving. What do women do in order to give birth? Whether or not you have a cesarean section or not, our bodies still, the uterus expands and contracts. The oceans with the tide, right? Everything is about expansion and contraction. Heat, water, when it freezes and melts, boom, boom, right? Man, you're probably thinking either I'm like the most energetic person or just really out there because I'm like getting myself so excited about all this stuff. I told you I can geek out, right? All right, Merteks Law, check this out. We as humans, and then we have technology, the other AI, artificial intelligence, and all this stuff. People start to really get freaked out because they're afraid that computers are going to take over, right? Science fiction is becoming reality. What happens is the technology, think of a computer. It took so long to have like the first computer, to develop that. And it took up, like an entire room, right? Those big processors and stuff. Well, let's look at computers now. And every year they have a new iPhone. There's more technology. I don't even have my phone on me. There's more technology in our phones that we have than like centuries put together, right? So then what happens with that is there is this critical tipping point where we have to rapidly accelerate our own change. And the one way we can do it is through appreciative inquiry and constructing conversations that you can accomplish more in one day of professional development that is mindfully, intelligently designed than you could do in like 2 or 3 years. And it's how you orchestrate things. And that's what we're going to be also working on by the end of this course. All right. So as the world becomes more complex and dynamic, we have to elevate the questions as well. So if things are popping up because we have problems, with technology, like when your computer crashes, like some people will say, well, like, is it even fixing any problems with technology? Technology is supposed to solve problems, but it creates a lot too. And I had a colleague years ago, and she said, all technology does is give you the ability to do things faster. So you're going to have to wind up doing more, ironically. But it is what it is. But if you look at technology and the possibilities, if things are being freed up because of technology, then we can save time and do all these other things. Grading programs, I don't have to add things up anymore. Now I can spend time on creating meaningful lessons and not adding things up. Leveraging a learning management system makes things happen faster, yes. So I can do, great things like coming up with positive questions instead of solving problems. Another way to look at it, if you look at the old model of leadership that I was talking about, the trickle down thing, that's in the lower left-hand corner. And then you have the upper right-hand corner of questions and the spirit of inquiry. When you invite people to come together and ask the right questions and put in a little design thinking, which is STEM related, that's when you can really get past some of those struggles. I think I've said it enough. Boom, boom, boom. In different ways. And here again, another way of looking at it, deficit-based frames. What is wrong? How do we get there? Whose fault is it? How bad is it? And how do we fix it? I'm going to go out there and say diversity, equity, and inclusion questions can be very deficit-based. If we focus on how people got to a certain position, we're going to get really good at knowing that and then maybe even recreating it in a different way. So if you look at one problem pop up and then another one, you've got this like whack-a-mole system of trying to hammer out problems. Rather than that, let's focus on what do we want more than anything? And what are the positive outliers? And let's focus on those. And how might we focus on what we really, really want for students and create a container so that happens and get as many stakeholders as possible. And that's how you go from the deficit to the abundance. And you know the difference between zero sum and abundance. Zero sum, there's only so much pie. And if you get a slice of pie, that means there's going to be less pie for me. The other opposite is, just like love. If I have one child versus 2 or 3 children, it's not like I have less love because I have more children. I have more love because it's abundant. Can't we do that in education? One thing that we don't have abundance of is time. I will admit that. But how might we, given the fact that we have limited amount of time, how can we leverage that time to create what we want? See? All right. So the thing about it too is this approach has been proven to work. There are case studies that you're going to read. We know it works. New ways for solving complex problems. Strengths show up. You build practice and data that informs possible solutions. So it's not like we don't want to analyze data, but we want to analyze the data we want, right? There's also the whole idea of when you analyze data from the past, that's dead. It's in the past. You can analyze data, and it's called action research, by discovering the future. And when we collect data about what we want for the future, that is research as well. And that movement in psychology that I had mentioned, it starts with a P. Proactive research. It's not that. It's another word. I've seen it a couple of times, but sometimes I need to see things like 5 to 7 times to get it into my brain. And this is one of them. That one word. But the study in psychology of what do you want for your future, as opposed to, man, you had a lot of baggage. What happened to you in the past? We need to clear that out. It's a yes and. You need to do both, right? That's another big thing on appreciative inquiry. Yes, that's true. And there's also this thing. Just because 2 things are opposites and they coexist doesn't mean that they cancel each other out. There's dark and there's light. There's heat and there's cold. They can coexist, right? All right. New possibilities, opportunities, and aspirations, new knowledge, creativity, and innovation. Isn't that what we want? We talk about that in education all the time. And at the same time, we're trying to fix problems. Let's deepen connections, let's strengthen relationships, and let's generate understanding. Those are the types of curious leaders that you can become. And when you do that, you'll see what happens to climates and cultures and how it comes alive. I designed a conference right in the thick of COVID. They were going to cancel something for the Head Start organization in South Dakota. And some of the connections that I made, they said, oh, please, Jennifer can save your conference. So we did it. Within 10 days, we took a conference that was going to be live. We put it on Zoom. We used appreciative inquiry. They were so afraid that if we asked some questions and turned people loose, that it was going to just go south. Every single conversation was inspiring because I asked a positive question. No one complained. Everyone said, thank you so much for this conference. We needed it so badly. If you had canceled this, I don't know what we would have done. I can't believe that these moments were possible. And you know what? We're learning what's working with Zoom, and we're going to continue to develop those types of things. Look at cyber schools. A lot of schools didn't have online school, and we had to pivot on a dime. What's working about it? What do we want to keep? We should be asking those questions. Despite the pandemic, despite the struggles, how have we become resilient? What have we learned? What do we want more of? And those are those life-giving questions, and that's the power of AI. All right. There are 5 principles of AI. The more you know about it, the more you can use it and leverage it. But we are going to stop for now. I don't even know how long I've been talking. And I'm going to make a separate video. So that's where we're going to go for next time. I want you to, again, pause and reflect. What has excited you the most about things that I said? Thank you so much. I hope this was of value. I hope it inspires you to want to learn more. And I will catch you next time. Bye.